So who's going to be on the board when the Packers pick at 25? We go through how we see the first round going on Thursday night.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. In order to try and figure out who the Green Bay Packers are going to select, it's important that we know what the options are going to be. And we went through at various times in the offseason, these mock draft scenarios. And, we talked about worst case scenarios and the closer we get to the day and the more reporting we get. Now, late reporting, I think is hit or miss. But when the consensus coalesces around certain ideas, we ought to take notice. And I'm talking about the consensus in reporting, not just the consensus board and all those things, because the NFL does not draft off of them, but they do, I think, provide us a roadmap. So I want to know who the Packers are going to pick at 25, who is going to be available to them. And so I went through this exercise and I wrote about it today for The Leap. And I want to go through it, because I think it's worth not just going through it, but stopping at various points and going, okay, here's where the Packers could potentially move up. Here's where, their opportunities could be. Here's where this run starts or this run ends. And I think that's a useful exercise for us to go through. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on the top 10 because I don't know that the top 10 impacts the Packers all that much. Caleb Williams is going to be the first overall pick. We know that. It's a little annoying because he's really good, and the Bears will probably screw him up. Jaden Daniels looks like he's going to be a Commander, and that's relevant for the Packers because it means he probably won't be a Viking, although we've heard that the Raiders have tried to move up to 2 to try and get Jaden Daniels. Antonio Pierce recruited Jaden Daniels. There's a long-standing relationship there. Jaden Daniels would like to play in silver and black. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. He's probably going to be a Washington Commander. And then it sounds like Elliott Wolf is going to take Drake May at number 3. The teams will try and move up. The Vikings, most notably, will try and move up. But unless they just go absolutely crazy with, I'm talking unprecedented. And that's been sort of the discussions here, that these teams at the top, the 3, 4, 5 teams, they're talking about wanting like major hauls to move. Drake May at 3. It's looking like Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the guy at 4. That they're not going to trade out of there. We're not going to get quarterbacks 1, 2, 3, 4. That's never happened. Where we've had 4 quarterbacks go in a row. And I think because it doesn't sound like the Giants are actually in the quarterback market, that the Vikings will be comfortable moving up with the Chargers, who there's some late momentum here that they'll just stick and pick, whether it's Joe Alt, whether it's Malik Neighbors. Both of those guys make sense for them, but I could see, and this has also been something that I've heard, is that a team like the Chargers could pull a Cardinals from last year, trade out of 5, and then move back up. This is something that I have thought the Cardinals would do at various points. I now no longer believe that's true. I think when you have the chance to draft Marvin Harrison Jr., you'd probably just do that. And I think that's what they're going to do. So now we get to trade at 5. And I think it takes 11, 23, and that future first, which is a lot to give up for skinny Kirk Cousins. But that's what the Vikings do in this scenario. I think that's the most likely scenario. I think regardless of what the compensation is or where he gets taken, that JJ McCarthy going to the Minnesota Vikings is the most likely scenario. From there, Malik Neighbors at 6 to the Giants. That is the one everyone assumes. Joe Alt to the Titans is also another one that everyone assumes. And I think that while I wouldn't be surprised if they went some different directions here, especially the Titans taking a receiver, Rome Odunze, I think if Malik Neighbors is there at 7, that could be something that they look at. Their new head coach came from Cincinnati, where they took famously Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. And it worked out pretty well for Cincinnati. Now, they don't have Joe Burrow. But, look, this is an opportunity to get the best tackle in the class. I think a prospect who is frankly better than Penei Sewell was, honestly, and a receiver prospect who is not viewed the same way in Rome Odunze. Here's where the Chargers come back up. They can just send their high third to the Charger or to the Falcons, move up 3 spots. They jump the Bears for Rome Odunze. And if I could just bet Rome Odunze going in the top 8, I would. Because I think a team is going to jump up and wanted to jump the Bears, who I believe would take him if he's there. Instead, the Bears take Dallas Turner. The number 1 defensive player comes off the board. This could also be an offensive lineman. There's a number of them. Interestingly, as I went through this, the offensive lineman came off the board later than I initially thought they would. And that's relevant for the Packers, given where they could be moving, who they could be targeting. Is there a true tackle they think is worth moving up for in this draft? Someone who is a no doubt tackle, not just a true tackle. Someone who checks all the boxes, not someone that Jordan Morgan is a maybe tackle. Graham Barton is a maybe tackle. JC Latham is a no doubt tackle. Troy Fautanu is a maybe tackle. Tali Fuanga is a maybe tackle. There aren't actually that many no doubt tackles that check the Packers boxes in this draft. We've talked about that before. And then, so now you have the Jets, Aaron Rodgers team in the top 10, Brock Bowers. There's some momentum there. If you can't get Rome Odunze, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets moved up, although they don't have their second round pick. Green Bay has it. I think that would make sense for them. So here's where the conversations are going to start. Because here's where the corner run could happen. The Packers could take 28 or 25 and 41 and get into that, depending on what the quarterback trades are going to look like, into that 9-10 sort of range. 11. If the Falcons trade back, would they want to trade back again? New head coach, new regime. There's less pressure on these guys to get this all right now that you've got a new head coach. Could they move up for Quinion Mitchell or Terrion Arnold? I could see it. I really could. Now, Brian Gutekunst said, I don't believe in being one player away, but I can also believe that if they think there's one true blue chip player in this class at corner, that you can go up and get him. I think it could make sense for Green Bay to handle it that way. Is that what I think is going to happen? No. We'll talk about what I think is going to happen here in just a second on Locked On Packers. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on the Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, at 11, the Falcons take Quinion Mitchell. I could see the case for Terrion Arnold here. If you want to flop this pick with the next one, you can do that. At 12, I have the Eagles trading up to get Terrion Arnold. He's a perfect fit for Vic Fangio's defense. A more zone corner than Kool-Aid McKinstry, who's more of a man corner. And the Eagles, there's been this reporting that they made calls trading up, that they want to move up for a cornerback, a position where Howie Roseman has never drafted in the first round. At 13, there is momentum now for Michael Penix to end up with the Raiders. He is one of those players, Michael Penix, where the league seems to be higher on him than the media consensus. And Adam Schefter said yesterday, maybe it was 2 days ago, to Pat McAfee, that he thinks 5 quarterbacks in the first round is a lock, and he thinks there's a good chance to get 6. And that those 6 could all go in the first 24 or so picks. Do the math, carry the 3. The first 24 is the first 24 picks. Michael Penix and it sounds like Bo Nix are probably going to be first round picks. Their over-unders are low 30s on the prop markets. So the betting markets think that they're borderline first round picks. This would be early, but you pay the quarterback tax in a situation like this. The Saints, they go Tali Fuanga. They need a right tackle. Fuanga comes right in for them and does that. The Rams trade up for Brian Thomas at 15. And they get Brian Thomas from LSU. Peter Schrager has all but guaranteed that the Rams are going offense in this one. And this is a tier. Brian Thomas is the last of the no doubt first round receivers in this class. At 16, the Seahawks draft Troy Fautanu from Washington. Mike McDonald comes over to Seattle and brings the Washington OC and I believe offensive line coach as well. Fautanu makes a ton of sense. I could also see Byron Murphy in this spot. Either way, Fautanu comes off the board here. This is where, if the Packers wanted to trade up for a tackle, there's 2 guys, Olu Fashanu and J.C. Latham. And they could probably just give up 58 to get into this range. And that might even be too much. If they want Olu or they want Latham, I love Latham. If they want a right tackle tomorrow to just ass kick dudes and move Zach Tom to center, I love it. Latham. Now, I don't think the Jaguars or Bengals, who I have taking Olu and Latham, are in a position to say, we'd rather not take this really good player at a huge position of need for us while we're trying to protect franchise quarterbacks. But it's something to keep in mind as the draft starts to unfold. When does that tackle run start, and how bad do the Packers really want one? We don't quite know the answer to that, but I think this is another place where you could look at a trade up for a tackle in a situation like this, if the board plays out the way that it does. So the Jaguars take Olu, the Bengals take Latham in this scenario, day 1, easy right tackle starter for them. The Colts at 19 take Jared Verse. Not someone I think the Packers, like if he fell to 25, maybe they consider it. The Steelers at 20 is interesting. So this was my final prediction was that the Packers move up to 20 to get Cooper DeJean. Now, the only reason that's changed, and I still think that could happen, and I think there's a decent chance that Green Bay says it's too important to get Coop to not trade up to assure you get him. But the way that the board is broken now, and with the guys available, I wonder if Green Bay has a little less urgency. The Steelers, in this case, I think would not have the same appetite to trade down either because Graham Barton is on the board. He reminds me of David DeCastro, a longtime Pittsburgh Steeler, former Pittsburgh Steeler All-Pro. And they bring in Russell Wilson, they bring in Justin Fields. They're trying to revamp this offense. We know the defense is really good. Get those guys, whether it's a center, whether it's a guard. Someone like Graham Barton is a perfect fit. At 21, Byron Murphy. You lose Christian Wilkins and you draft the most disruptive interior pass rusher in this class. No doubt about it. At 22, the Denver Broncos, who, remember, they traded down. They get Bo Nix. I know this is crazy, but remember what Adam Schefter said? And there's been a lot of dot connecting with Bo Nix and the Broncos because he plays a lot like, in terms of style, Drew Brees. A lot of underneath stuff. He's really accurate on screens and the short throws, makes good decisions. We saw it at Oregon. He really modulated back a lot of the reckless decision making that we saw at Auburn. And then the deep balls, when he did throw them, incredibly accurate. And in fact, by some charting, a more accurate deep ball thrower than Jaden Daniels, who was the highest graded thrower on yards over 25 yards in the history of Pro Football Focus, I believe, in terms of Power 5 quarterbacks. So that seems like it is right up the alley of what Sean Payton wants to be and where he wants to live. There's been some talk, they'll take someone and then trade back into the first. Well, in this case, they trade back out of 12 and they get with the Eagles, and then they get their quarterback here without having to trade back into the first round. Now the Chargers are up. Remember, they traded back with the Vikings, and then they traded back up, but did not have to give up 23 in order to do that. Leatu Latu, the edge rusher. Remember, they restructured Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. They need edge. I could see Chop Robinson here as well. That Big Ten flavor. Jim Harbaugh saw that up close and personal. But I think this one makes more sense, and he is the higher rated player by consensus. Now we're a pick before the Packers are set to go, and we don't think Cooper DeJean is a Dallas Cowboy. They have other much more pressing needs, and they don't keep their cards very close to the vest. So I think it's going to be Amaris Mims. Bob Sturm, who's a friend of the show down in Dallas, born and raised in Wisconsin, Packers fan, he said he thinks it's going to be Amaris Mims, and he would know. So now you're here if you're Green Bay. And here is just a smattering of players available to you at 25. Cooper DeJean, Chop Robinson, Nate Wiggins, A.D. Mitchell, Tyler Guyton, Jordan Morgan, Johnny Newton. There are a ton of really good options for the Packers, and by extension, a ton of really good options for them at 41, because there's still a slew of really, really good players who are going to be available at 21. I want to talk about who I think the Packers are going to pick. And then I want to finish out the first round because I think it helps set us up for what comes next. The players who could be available at 41. I want to do that on the other side here on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep. You lift your head up and you say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heist, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. So I did telegraph this a little bit. I have Cooper DeJean here at 25. It's the player that I think they have the most interest in drafting. Though I do think the top corners, Quinion Mitchell and Terrion Arnold, are also potential plays here. And Arnold in particular, when we thought the Packers were going to play more man coverage than I do now, frankly, I think they're going to be a mostly zone scheme and play a bunch of man coverage on third down in the red zone. They will probably play more man coverage than Joe Barry did. I think Terrion Arnold is a good enough man cover corner to make that work. The Jalen Johnson comparison is a really good one. And when the Bears went to play more man coverage last year, Jalen Johnson was able to do it. I think Terrion Arnold would be in a similar vein there, though I would not advise going all the way up to get someone like that when, as you see, Cooper DeJean just falls into your lap. So because the Packers pick, again, in 16 picks, let's just finish this out. So at 26, I have Chop Robinson, so he comes off the board to the Bucs. Arizona, they take Nate Wiggins, the corner from Clemson. Was he on the Packers board? I don't know. The Bills take A.D. Mitchell, someone I don't think the Packers would have taken anyway, so not a big deal. Darius Robinson, again, someone I don't think the Packers would have taken. The Lions grab him at 29. Tyler Guyton, who I still think the Packers would consider, and I still think they might take, frankly. I still think they'd be a really good pick. He goes to Baltimore. They love their big offensive lineman. The 49ers take Jordan Morgan, who is a just perfect fit. A perfect fit for any Shanahan scheme team. And he's a player who it sounds like is getting some first round buzz, late first round in the draft. And then at 32, I have the Chiefs taking Johnny Newton. There's a lot of different ways to go here, but it just seems like, yeah, they're going to pay, Chris Jones. He's going to get all the monies over the next couple of years, but he's also getting older and they don't have another guy with a lot of juice on that defensive front. Chris Jones can play the tackle. He can play end. He can play all over your defensive front. And I think, frankly, so can Johnny Newton. That would be pretty scary for opposing teams. Now, in terms of the consensus, Kool-Aid McKinstry, still on the board. We expect him to go top of round 2. Someone who could fall to the Packers at 41. Jackson Powers Johnson, the center from Oregon, still on the board. I don't know what to do with these receivers, Ladd McConkey and Xavier Worthy. They're still there. They're fringe first-round players. But so now, we're at 4. You've got Keon Coleman, Edrin Cooper. I think he's very much in play at 41. Troy Franklin, Ennis Rakestraw, Zach Frazier, Kingsley Suamataia, who is also, Tom Pelissero talked about this yesterday, a fringe first-round player, someone who could sneak into that first round. Tyler Nubin, his prop opened at 32.5, right on that first round. He still seems like he's a borderline first-round player. Now, interestingly, Xavier Legette just in for a top 30. He would still be available in this scenario, though it sounds like the Panthers are just going to take him and it's going to be good. That's interesting. That's interesting. So there's still a ton of really good options. Guys that Packer fans have been looking forward to. Kool-Aid at 41 would still be in play. Edge Cooper would still be in play. Suamataia would still be in play. We'll see on Legette. If they wanted to go receiver, Keon Coleman, someone like that could be in the mix. If Jackson Powers Johnson falls to 41, to me, that's a no-brainer. I love Jackson Powers Johnson. Keep Zach Tom at right tackle. You got JPJ in there for you at center. I don't want to go through a whole second round mock here, but I think this is really instructive. It was really fun for me to go through and go, okay, this is what the Packers are looking for. And to me, it's the biggest case against moving up. Because even if you really like a guy, what you have, it's not worth it to me to give up 41, to give up the chance to get an Edrin Cooper or a Javon Bullard or a Kool-Aid McKinstry if he were to fall. Or you could take, 41 and a day 3 pick and move up into the 30s to get Kool-Aid. And what a good position you would be in. There's still offensive line. I guess you're getting a little thin. you'd start to worry like, okay, is Suamataia the best tackle left? Yeah, probably. A couple interior offensive linemen. Zach Frazier is another one. Projected to go at the top of this round here in round 2. So you might have to move up if you really like Suamataia, especially if he's considered a borderline first-round player. There's going to be plenty of teams picking in the top of the second round who may not have gotten a tackle, who would very much like to get a tackle. And that makes sense for Green Bay to say, well, now it's going to cost less because it's day 2, rather than move up in the first. Like, the ideal scenario is not to trade up to get Cooper DeJean. It's to let him fall to you, and then maybe in round 2 you trade up to get that tackle, and then you just let the board come to you from there. Or maybe you just sit. Edgerrin Cooper at 41. The best corner on your board at 41. Who knows? Maybe it's Kool-Aid. Maybe he falls. Maybe the injury scares some teams. No full athletic profile. Maybe that scares some teams. Some of these other sexy names, the Ricky Pearsalls. The Chargers reach for Junior Colson at the top of the second. Like that stuff could all happen. And that is great for the Packers, frankly. So that's why we wanted to go through this. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun on draft night with it. We're going to be live after Thursday night. We will be live on Friday night after the Packers pick potentially 4 times, maybe more. Who knows? We will be live Friday night. And then we'll have another podcast recapping the whole draft. That'll be in your feeds the next week on Monday. A ton more to come this week. That means on Locked On Packers. So follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts. And follow us on the socials. Instagram, Locked On Packers. TikTok, Locked On Packers. Go subscribe on YouTube, Locked On Packers, so you can stay Locked On Packers.